Hey everybody, how's it going today? My name is Random Hamilton, and I am switching over to doing some drawing today. We're going to continue on with the piece that we started on Monday. It's a piece that I sketched over the weekend, really loose sketch, and just decided to go ahead and use this kind of like the inauguration piece where we would kick off the channel. So we've put in about 12 hours so far, off and on. You know, there's no rush. Half that, the reason it's taking so long, half really, is just because I'm chatty and enjoying the conversation. But, you know, that's part of the fun. Part of the fun of doing all this is really figuring out what and how and when and where we would like to be creators and creatives. And there's no right way, wrong way, and there's no format that is specifically of a greater quality than the other. We're going to go ahead and I'm just going to adjust the camera real quick. You know, now I am absolutely new to streaming, and I'm going to make so many rookie mistakes. And so please, if you have any suggestions, ideas, comments, or feelings about what you're seeing or how I'm approaching this or how I'm presenting, all that feedback is so immensely welcome. So please don't hesitate to throw your opinions and ideas and preferences in, because it just helps me and it helps us, it helps the channel. And yeah, it would be really nice to have that kind of feedback and participation. So really appreciate it. Let's see, we're up. Okay, cool. Got my chats up. Nobody's in the channel yet, and that is totally great, totally fine, because it means I can go ahead and make all the mistakes I want and eat my kimchi and cottage cheese, because I am also on a fasting diet. Well, not diet, I'm fasting. What that means is I'm 40, and life and weight and stuff hits you in different fun ways. And as a 40-year-old man, gaining weight and losing weight is a totally different thing. So, little backstory. I used to be extremely big. In fact, at my highest, I was 360 pounds. Was 360 pounds until I was probably the age of 20. I went to college, had no money, lived off water and bread. And was able to pull myself down into the 180s. My comfortable, happy place is around 220, where I'm really happy with my body. These days, I'm in the upper 240s. But most recently, during COVID, I got to 265 again, and that really scared me and threw me up. And it's so much harder to shed that weight as a 40-year-old man, especially being a stay-at-home dad. A lot of my meals occur with the meals that I eat with my son. And so it's just about finding that balance. Mm-hmm. And currently, that balance is not eating between the hours of 10 p.m. and noon. So when I get to the point where I can eat at noon, I am ravenous. And these days, rocking a little kimchi and cottage cheese, like low-fat cottage cheese, is awesome. I love it. It gets something in my body. I can then be hungry when lunch rolls around, but I'm not packing on it a bunch of extra calories my body's not going to burn through. Your body will burn right through the cottage cheese and the kimchi. So there we go. All right. So let's go ahead and get cracking on this artwork. We got lots of drawing to do, and let's just make it happen. So, couple of things to cover for those new to the chat. We are doing what's called pen painting, and I use a Bic pen. I'm going to move the camera here, so please, if this bothers you, close your eyes for a second. Okay. Come over to my other portion of my office, which is just a roll away. There we go. All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and continue on with the piece in front of you. We're doing what's called pen painting, and what that means is that we're using a Bic pen. And all I'm doing is I'm dragging ink along the surface of the paper. This is really important because paper is a tangible thing that can receive impressions, as we know, right? You write with a pen or pencil, and it kind of creates the groove where the material, the pen, the pencil, settle into that space. However, if you're clever, you don't have to create those grooves. You can lay the ink on top of the paper, and then the ink is still technically in its liquid form before it dries. What that means is we can create the nib of the pen to drag the ink along the surface to create the depth and the texture we need. And if we do that, we can slowly, slowly, slowly build the ink up to accomplish what we're looking to get done. And so I'm going to go ahead and just make sure my phone's turned on because my wife is going to call me to order food when her and my son are done at the park. Alright, so a couple things here. Last time we were on the stream, we developed this area right here. Now, part of me feels like this piece is going a little dark. And, you know, it kind of is, but that's okay too, right? Anything that we make here, if I want to take it into a digital space, I can grab any selection there and lighten it up, right? That's okay. You can't go wrong with pen. I mean, you can, but let's not worry too much about if we're going to go wrong with pen. Let's just create. Because if we just create without worrying about if it's right, is it wrong, is it good, is it bad, and you just work, the stuff that can come out from that place of just working through it is really where the magic of all this stuff happens. Welcome to the stream for those who are here. Anybody who has any questions, ideas, comments, or just want to say hi, please feel free to jump in the chat. We'll be drawing for the next couple hours, and I just want to kind of hang out and have a good time. So, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move away from this area right now. I could absolutely do a little more refining in the shadows, but I just don't think they're necessary. I think the bigger goal here is to get the whole piece done, and then if at the point where I want to transition this into something where I'm going to make it into a shirt or a sticker or just a digital piece, I'll go ahead and start solving those other problems in Photoshop later on. One thing I do want to stress is that this piece is going to be one of the first pieces that's going to be in the art book. It's the first piece we started on the channel. And on top of that, this piece is also one that I fully intend on sculpting and turning into a vinyl toy. You might look at this and not see quite how that relates, and I can explain that later when we get to that point. But I've been in toy design for a long, long time, and I plan on yearly, if not more frequently, but I think yearly is a little more realistic with production expectations, plan on yearly outputting the work we do on this channel into a vinyl toy line and yearly putting out a run of designer toys as a seasonal execution. And we'll talk about how that comes into pricing when it comes to subscribers and stuff. But in my opinion, if you're a subscriber to my channel, you're a participant of our community, I would really like to make sure you get it at a very, very low to no cost if there's a way for me to swing it. I got to figure that out. But the idea feels good, and it feels good with me as an artist. One of the things about me is I do not like to price my art. When I've done galleries, I set it at $1 and I put it to auction, and I allow the price to kind of come to the grounds itself. We'll see if that's something we can maintain through this digital space. I have to believe there's a way for us to do that, so I'll figure it out. Let's get drawing. I've been talking long enough. We have one more bite of kimchi, and then let's go. Alright, so let's go ahead and resolve the tentacle. I've started here, but the tentacle really is going to be one of the most key points of this piece. As you'll notice, or maybe you don't notice, I usually put myself in as a subject matter in drawings when I'm trying to express an idea, or there's going to be violence visited on a character. I don't mind putting myself as a medium for that. Whenever you see the tentacle, you're going to notice the tentacle is going to be a good deal darker than the rest of the model, and in fact, or the rest of the drawing. And in fact, the tentacle is going to be hot, bright white with a very dark outside sheen, and almost like an oily kind of sheen finish on the actual tentacle itself. That usually represents my ideas. So my creativity and my ideas, what's coming out of my brain, I usually represent that when I'm doing kind of that inky, kind of blobby, squiddy character. And so let's just push. So I've already laid down some Sharpie, and the reason I do that is because Sharpie kind of forces me into an uncomfortable space that I love. I have to commit. I've already gone and put down this heavy black, and I can't do anything about it. Effectively, when I lay a Sharpie in, it says that this part of the piece is done, and I can't do anything further for it, because you can't go any farther than black. Yeah, you can try to lift the ink out, but I don't necessarily think that that's if you go that route, then I think you're only hamstringing yourself. You know, one of my mentor was this amazing artist named Lee White. He is, to this day, probably one of the greatest minds I've ever had the opportunity to work under and learn under. And Lee, for the first 4 months of my apprenticeship, all I did was doodle sketches on the side and then prepare and gesso his canvases. And then for the first couple months, he would give me assignments, and I was only allowed to draw with a pen for months. He didn't want to see any work out of pencil. And the reason for that is because he was trying to get me to understand, all right, let me correct that. I believe he was trying to get me to understand that you can commit to a piece of art and you don't need to constantly erase. And I used to have a really big problem with that. I would always get so stuck on something being right, quote unquote, that it would become a detriment to me actually finishing pieces of artwork. And that, I mean, I've had that challenge. I had that challenge for years and years and years and years. And what I found is that once I kind of got past that hill and that hurdle, and I just stopped worrying about what it should be, my best work started coming to life. When you stop worrying about if this piece is right, or if people will like it, or if people won't like it, when that no longer is the biggest focus of your attention, then things just get easier. You have less expectations on you. You feel less forced. And for some people, maybe that is their sweet spot for really knocking work out. But for me, it was definitely more of a detriment. It definitely didn't feel very good. Okay, so I've just laid in the initial details. We're going to come back through and we're going to massage all of this. And I'm just going to kind of poke in and put some of this information down. I just effectively want to start putting myself into committed parts on this piece of artwork. Because the less I can then try to go and change, the better for everybody. It means we will get through the art at a much more reasonable pace. I would say if I was to put headphones on, not talk, and work on this piece of art, I'd probably have it done in about 6 hours. 6 to 6.5 hours, I think is the average. So if it's a question of busting out art at a high speed, that's never really a problem. But to me, that would be a much more boring time. And I'm just not here for that. I don't need to stream if I'm not going to actually talk and engage. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. Okay, so we're just laying in our pen work. Now again, I talked earlier about the whole pan painting, and that is absolutely the technique you see in this piece, and we're something we're going to keep on with, but you do have to put boundaries down. You do have to create, hard lines, because that's how you get defining contours. So what I usually do is if there's a piece that I'm going to explore, I'm going to work on, one of the first things I do is I come in and I lay down my hard lines. I know that this is my quote-unquote, the line I don't want to color outside of. Well, I do all the time, actually. It's one of my weak points. When I was younger, I never liked to color in the lines. I would always go outside of the lines, which is always fun. Let's see, just push here. Alright, and we're going to make sure that these two connect, because that's kind of important. You don't want to have a tentacle go behind another piece and then miss a line. Your eye will always fall on that, which is never a positive thing. Alright, so we're going to keep pushing here. Alright, so now, a couple things here. The tentacle is wrapping in on itself, and so think of it like a cinnamon bun. It's doing a double wrap. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that when I pull this guy in here and I start hardlining it, I don't miss, like, over hardline, and then I create a line that I have to work around. So I'm going to go really light. Again, this goes to that paint, the pen painting. If you don't press hard and you just slightly apply pressure onto the page, what you're doing is you're actually just moving the ballpoint on the pen slightly, and that allows the ink to start discharging naturally alongside the ballpoint. But because we're not using the ballpoint to etch into and force any specific kind of, okay, so that's where that goes. So that's going to go there. If you give yourself the room to not damage the paper, you can really get some really beautiful results. And it's more of a guidepost so that you don't overdo it. So let's go ahead and do this. Just kind of create some lifts. Good there. I'm going to have the underside of the tentacle show here, because the suckers would be connecting with the pencil itself to hold it, not the kind of more inky portions of this. And then here, we're going to allow this to be some of the underside of the tentacle as well. There we go. All right. Yeah, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling all right about that. Okay. So what we've done is we've gone through and we've essentially established the plan. We've established the path that we're going to follow. So now, let's go ahead and bring in some real sincere hardline. So, a couple things. This is now the top side. This is the inky black side of this tentacle. So, let's commit. This is where I say, fuck it. Why not? Just darken it. Drop some Sharpie on there. You know, I'm not being super precise. I'm not being super gentle. I'm just kind of getting it there. I'm locking it in. I'm forcing myself on this path. I'm going to adjust my camera real quick. Just here. There we go. Okay. That didn't actually do anything. That's good. Okay. One more bite of kimchi. 1 second, please. For those who've never had kimchi and cottage cheese, it sounds gross, but I assure you, delightful. Okay. All right, there we go. I could also do you a favor by not eating next to my mic. That would be awesome, I'm sure. All right. So we've now laid our black in. Now, let's just start. You know what? I haven't started the black underside yet, so let's just begin there. We're going to start at the very tip. No reason, just it seems convenient. So I'm going to go ahead and I've left myself a little bit of room for that shine. I'm just going to start pulling the ink out of the black. Now this whole tip is going to go black, but what we want to do is we want to show a graduation of lighting so that we highlight the roundness. Because something you'll notice, and this is a very common thing in my artwork that you're going to see if you stick around and you start seeing more of my stuff. Yeah, I'll work with really heavy, dark blacks. I'll let my pictures go fairly dark. But what I really like to make sure of is that I show transitions. Because transitions to me are some of the best storytelling methods visually that we have. And at the end of the day, when we're creating art, we're telling stories. We are storytellers. I don't know if you've ever thought about it like that, but you're conveying an idea, an emotion, an inspiration, a character, a action. You're telling a visual story. And you do that through a method that doesn't lean into books or lean into writing, but absolutely has as much, if not more, emotional impact to a person who is just learning the story for the first time. You know, you are their gateway to this world. If you like drawing anime, and you draw a lot of anime characters, you're opening the door to a viewing audience that may have never even heard or seen what an anime is. You're their first contact. Like, think about that. When you do fan art, the majority of art people see around games comes from the community first. That's just kind of it's just kind of one of the beauties of today's day and age with the internet. And so by recognizing that and then thinking about your art with a little more care and intent, I find that often it will go a long way in the way you communicate that visual. You know, it's totally fine to go and just draw a character because it's your OC. That's cool. That's awesome. That's what drawing's supposed to be. But you're telling a story when you share that OC. You know, in fact, I was just on the stream with S Comics Maker the other day, and we were just doing some drawing challenges, and a lot of people were just drawing their OCs and sharing their OCs, and every single character that I saw, to whatever degree of art that they were capable of, every single character had a story. Oh, this character has been with me since high school. Oh, this is a character that I designed because I was really inspired by a game I played. You know, oh, this is a character that I saw or kind of was part of an anime I really loved, and I loved them so much that they became a character that I drew all the time, and I just brought them with me. I mean, that's such a common experience for so many artists. And when you really look at it and break it down, you're bringing your story with you, of you, through your characters, through where you choose to allow your attention and your efforts to execute. And I think that's something that I hope that someday most artists realize, is that the reason there's no right or wrong when it comes to being an artist or creating art or doing art. Yeah, there's right and wrong when it comes to a technique to some degree, but even then I challenge that. You can't tell me that if I was doing painting like this with a pen in college, that I would have been received well because it would have played like, yeah, they may have liked the piece of art I was working on. But the time it takes, the technique and the process, this is often the kind of stuff where I was encouraged to move away from it. Oh, the anatomy on those hands seems a little off, or the scaling's off, or this and that and this and that and this and that, which, to be fair, totally reasonable statements if I'm trying to align my work to look in a certain method or a certain way to bridge to be something that is not. But as an expression of me, as just a place where I'm sharing my thoughts and feelings and putting it on paper, there's just I don't see how you can go wrong with that. I don't agree that is a necessary thing to encourage somebody to change, and especially because what you're doing is you're deterring them from the path they were on, that if they continued would be exceptional. And that's one of the things I think that I would love to gradually, if not wholeheartedly, shift. In fact, I've thought many times about trying to find my way into doing like a TED Talks eventually about what is art in the modern age and how to temper your expectations about what it is that we create. Because I think that we have a responsibility as artists to look out for and cultivate and protect the ideas that we're putting on paper, and then support other artists who are also themselves just trying to find ways to communicate their ideas. I feel a very big obligation whenever I see an artist who is trying to work through an idea or trying to figure something out. I feel an immense obligation to help not lay that path out, but support their exploration as they go forward, right? I can't teach you how to draw because you have to want to draw. That's actually one of my favorite statements I've always used and said to prospective artists who are wanting to finally start investing into becoming an artist or developing their skill set. The number one thing that I cannot train you, the number one thing that there's no forcing it, is that art is in and of itself an absolute labor of love. And what I mean by that is you cannot create art if you're not willing to sit there and spend the hours to create art. It just doesn't work like that. It's too much of an investment. It's too much of a commitment. It's too much of a thing that you just have to stick in and really put the time in. I've had pieces that come together and they finish in a couple hours, and I have to literally walk away from them because if I touch them again, I'm going to ruin what I made. It happens, by the way. You totally ruin your work sometimes. Why is that up there? There we go, sorry about that. At the same time, however, I have found that some pieces require a sincere commitment on your part to just hanging in there and working through it. And what I mean by that is, think about it like a math problem. There are going to be times where the answer is not immediately in front of you. And it's the same way as with a piece of art. Sometimes you just have to work, plug away, until your vision starts resolving. I think that's an important lesson for a lot of young artists, is you've got to stick in there. For those who are watching on the stream, eventually this is something that will be on a YouTube VOD, and I will edit out my eating of kimchi and my snack, but thank you for hanging in here and dealing with me having this bite. I just needed it. Alright, last bite and I'm all done. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you. Alright. I got my coffee. Okay. Now I can finally fully focus on the piece. That's kind of half split there. Alright, so what we've done is we know that this part of the tentacle is going to curve back under here and connect there. And so I need to go ahead and consider that because I changed the path of that other tentacle, that this now needs to get more pronounced. Because now I have to represent that kind of that cinnamon roll curlicue. So I'm just going to push that. Push. And let's just pull this edge out. And then let's just keep pushing. Alright, so I laid down that really hard line earlier, and that was for a very specific reason. When I lay down a hard line, it also gives me a barrier for the highlight. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of lay in some initial line work for a few highlights. I like to make sure my highlights and my elements aren't too straight. I like to give them a little bit of variance, light bends and moves along with surfaces. That's not always to say there always has to be a highlight. In fact, vice versa. The fewer highlights you have, the more impactful your highlights are. And that might not seem... that may seem a little weird to think about at first, but you have to think about that there really is no right or wrong way to explore or develop visually an element. You just have to think about it in how your process goes. So in this case, I know that I am pulling the ink from the Sharpie area. And I'm just pulling. You can start seeing, I'm starting to see some really light lines develop. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to a very soft touch and not forcing the ink into the paper. You just gotta drag and pull. And this is a video I will put up on my YouTube. I will show this technique in a much closer fashion, and I'll demonstrate the different applications. But right now with me, you get to just see it in action and decide if it's something you want to waste your time on, because it is fairly time intensive. I'm going to start leaning the lines to follow the contour of the tentacle. This is something you'll see in tattooing. It's called salt and pepper shading. Salt and pepper shading is where they allow the grain to show and will slowly draw the grain up over the course of passes on the skin to create a depth of shadow. So they'll start light and they'll lead themselves down, because just like on paper, once you pack the ink or the black in there, you can't go back. You're kind of stuck. So it's about working from your highlights down to your lowlights, blocking in your shadows, and then going through and creating definition lines to create highlights that are just naturally the base skin or the base paper in this case. Yes, I'm aware. Fantasy football notifications, always fun. Okay, so we're going to keep pulling. We are pulling. If this feels like, when you're doing this technique, if you start feeling like, oh, this is taking forever, oh, I just can't get through this, take a break. Go to somewhere else in the piece. If you try to force this part of the piece, you will find that when you start getting to near the end, that's all you can look at. because you're going to have these moments where you were able to stick in there and really do the work, and that's the areas where it's just magic, where people will always see it and comment it and connect. And in this case, we are just trying to give ourselves as much room to execute the technique without having any regrets. Often we'll compare drawing to shooting a basketball. Now you may say, okay, now that doesn't make any sense, but hear me out. Shooting a basketball is the technique of getting the right position, having the right freedom to take the shooting pose and the shooting prep and setup that you want to have, that is your comfort zone, that you know gives you your best results of landing the ball in the basket. And it's about understanding what time it takes for you to execute that. Because basketball at the end of the day is all about technique. Yeah, athleticism is a huge part of it. Athleticism is the sport, but the amount of technique that goes into every play, whether it is a passing play, a shooting play, a dunk. I mean, for those of you who've never dunked a basketball, dunking a basketball is hard on your hand, it's hard on your arm, it's hard on your body. Anytime you see somebody do a massive dunk, or after they do like a dunk contest, you often see those guys in the ice bath. Yeah, that's because you're grabbing onto a rim and all of your body weight is shifting down and pulling you away from that rim. So you're going through a huge amount of physical strain to execute this thing. Now, we're not talking about dunks, we're talking about shooting. The reason we're talking about shooting is because when you shoot, you have to get the ball and the hold and the hand in a very specific position. And then when you release, there's a combination of jumping and that peak perfect spot where the height of your jump and the arc of your wrist decide if your ball goes in. It's not about if you're a good shooter, it's about if the circumstances have allowed you to execute the shot in a way that is consistent with the quality of what everybody expects for your regular shot. Drawing's the exact same way. I mean, minus the whole wrist. Well, actually, no, not. Minus the jumping part, unless you're into that. In my opinion, the vast majority of illustration, now I don't want to say this is true of painting or any other techniques, but drawing specifically, especially when we're talking about drawing in pen, it is a labor of patience and technique and slow development. Now, some people get very, very fast at certain parts of their artwork. You may find an artist that works in pen who can just bust out art constantly. But I have to encourage you to go look at the body of their work and look and see at what point do they stop with the detail, at what point do they stop with the way they're trying to get their point across. One of my favorite artists, actually, just does single line drawings. He doesn't do any detail. All he does is he does these beautiful, beautiful illustrations that are just completely empty, no shading. It's just all line work, but he starts with one line and he never lifts his pen. Like, think about that. I can't even fathom that. It doesn't even register to me on how I'd even approach doing my illustration style in that method. As you can see, we've now created a very soft salt and pepper transition off of that black, off of that Sharpie. And then one of the things I'll often do is when I'm making a transition from Bic to Sharpie, I'll go through and I'll start working my Bic over the Sharpie. And that will create a much deeper black, because Sharpie, at the end of the day, is the type of ink it leaves a bit of a chalky finish behind, right? Yeah, it's black, but if you really put Sharpie black next to something else, Sharpie's always going to come off a little bit dusty. And so what I like to do is I like to go ahead and just make sure that if I'm mixing mediums, which I am, when you're mixing pen and Sharpie, Bic pen and Sharpie, and not just Bic but ballpoint, you are transitioning different inks. They are not the same thing. The ink in these two pens is vastly different. And that's something that also is a big consideration when you're creating art like this, is understanding your tools. Does that mean you have to have been using it for years and years and years? Absolutely not. I can grab any ballpoint pen at this point and probably do a decent job of painting with it. But I need to understand at that point that the ink may act differently. The ballpoint may act differently. And in fact, that's why I use Bic, is because Bic, as a company, has not really changed the technology that they're using. They've not really changed their recipe for their ink. The way their ink exists and lives on paper is the same way that it's been going since I was in high school, which is why I started using them in the first place, because I couldn't afford art supplies when I was younger. So I would steal as many pens as I could from school, from other kids' desks. I would trade for them. I used to get lunch tickets because we were pretty poor when I was growing up, and I would go and I would trade my lunch tickets for art supplies when I was in high school. I always had a friend that his mom packed him a lunch. They were pretty decently well off, and he hated the food. So he would bring the food to school and then just use his money to get what he wanted, and he'd usually pass off his lunch to me. And for a period of time, when I was in my sophomore year of high school and I really needed art supplies, I would use my lunch ticket. I'd sell my lunch ticket for usually $4, or I would go ahead and trade it if I knew somebody just had like an excess of like pens on them in their bag or whatever. I'd trade my lunch ticket, because the lunch ticket would really get you pretty much, a good deal of food that wasn't horrible. All right, that's feeling pretty good. We've got a nice underlight there. You'll notice that I'm leaving a little bit of room on that underside of the tentacle, because I want to insinuate that there's some roundness and that that's going to lift right up around the body. All right, that's looking pretty good. I don't know if you can see that clearly. I know this light kind of blows out just a little bit, but I hope that it's coming across and that there's a nice pop of a highlight. We're now going to go ahead and start the other side of the tentacle. Now, one thing that I can do is I can go ahead and just start with the dragging method, but I don't want to lose this kind of cool highlight, this little pop we're seeing here. And so I'm going to go ahead and just start doing what's called nulling. That might be the wrong word actually, but I'm just going to go with it. And what that means is I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to slowly, still lightly, rotate the pen into small circles. This is not going to give me those long streaky lines like I was getting before. But what this does is this is a way to slowly start packing ink all into one spot on the page. But again, I'm not pressing hard enough to push it into the paper. And I think that what that does here is it allows me to start diffusing and feathering that hard line from the Sharpie and creating the transition to the Bic. And so we're pushing, we're developing that right there. All right. Alright, perfect. So now, you're starting to see that this area is starting to soften. And, Sharpie is such a good tool, but again, you don't use Sharpie in an additive method so much so that you can play around with it. Because once you put Sharpie down, Sharpie is committed. Sharpie does not care if you are not ready to fully make that dark line. Sharpie don't give a fuck. Excuse the language. But what it does do is it essentially tells you this part of the page is this. And it defines a section on your piece of artwork. And by allowing it to define that section of artwork and then just building up around from it, you may use too much, and that's part of the learning process. You may use too little and have to go back in there. Also part of the learning process. But in this case, we are just using it as a means to create one of the hottest highlights on the page. And that only was accomplished because I had laid the Sharpie in the first place. The Sharpie helps define this highlight that allows that tentacle to look like it's got a nice hot hit hitting it. And it makes the tentacle look glossy and shiny. And that's what I was going for. Materiality is such a big part of pen artwork. Because again, once you lay it down, you're committed. So thinking about the materiality and the way that the light plays in the scene is everything. Now, I haven't defined a light source. One thing you'll notice here is I'm just kind of doing a general lighting, and it's kind of dark. And if somebody was to look at this and say, "Oh, the lighting's not," I couldn't argue. Yeah, the lighting's not baked in. I've allowed it to be unique. But there's something to be said about that. You know, there's something to be said about just letting the piece be a darker piece and accepting that. I'm just going to kind of break this in, put a little bit of a softness onto that spot right there. Good. And then let's continue over here. Again, everything that's already black, we've already done the hard work. We've laid down the dark and the shadows, and now we're just developing. So I'm pushing. I'm going to do knurling. I took that terminology. That's actually from 3D. It's a type of metal finish. You'll see on aluminum, steel, pretty much every metal out there, I think. It's Knurling. And I've always taken the visual of that, the way it looks in 3D, and applied that to the method in which I apply ink to the page. And the reason for that is because I think that the visual effect of that metal finish is really cool. And when you scale it up, it looks crazy and messy. But if you scale it down, we use this a lot for texturing. So often I'll be working on something in 3D and I need a really nice texture. And I'll look to metal knurling even as like a mask or a filter to bring a little bit of subtle texture over the top of something. Okay. I'm going to slowly develop that. Give that just a little bit of a hot hit. Let that stay brighter. There we go. Nice, just like that. Now again, if you were to look at this under the light, you're going to see where the two inks are not, there's like two definitive lines. And so I'm going to come through and I'm going to start pulling the Bic into the Sharpie. A very big part of this process is making sure that the transitions don't become something people's eyes get caught on. Because people, when their eye stops on a piece of artwork, you have made a mistake. That's not to say that your eye isn't going to stop in one spot so you can observe it. That's totally normal. But if you have interrupted the flow of somebody taking in your artwork as they're observing it, you're working against yourself. Now, that's not this, again, people will stop and sit and watch and look, and that's part of art. That's part of the experience of taking art in and experiencing it. But you want that to be intentional. I want to create a spot where I want your eye to rest, right? And your eye's not looking at one specific dot. Your eye is looking at the surrounding elements that on that piece of artwork. You know, a great example, Mona Lisa. Look at the Mona Lisa. How much time do you think people spend looking at the side of her head? Not very long. You know, they're looking at the eyes, they're looking at the hands, looking at the pursed lips, they're looking at all the things on that painting that represent this interesting woman in this interesting time period. You know, it's just a sitting portrait, but there's something so amazing about the setting, about the technique, about the tonality, about her expression, about her eyes, about her mouth. Very low on that list is, oh, the side of her head. But if you made a mistake there, if let's say you broke technique, let's say that was an area where you were being lazy, let's say that was an area where you just couldn't be bothered to hang in there and just keep pushing and grinding in a way that would get it to where you want it to go, that's where people's eyes are going to rest, and it's going to suck. Not that the piece is going to suck, but it's going to suck because that was not an intended part of your storytelling method. Because again, remember, guys, we are storytellers. When we create, when we visualize, when we develop art, we are communicating a story through a visual medium. And it's a wonderful gift that we've all been provided if we enjoy doing that kind of thing. Let me just check the chats real quick, make sure I'm not missing anything here. That's not what I wanted to bring on. I guess I'm not sure that's right anymore. Okay. Twitch stream looks good. Dashboard looks good. details up real quick. Awesome. And I'm still going to be there. Perfect. Okay. Sorry about that. I just wanted to, don't want to ever have to leave somebody hanging when they can't view what's going on. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and keep pushing here. And let's just push on developing. Okay. I need to define this black border. I need a hard line. Now, this is a little bit of one of those moments, but you have to do it. But the problem is that I also have these suckers on the inside. And if I don't properly develop this here and think about the shape that I want this blackness to take, those suckers are going to be the things that suffer. I may infringe on an area where I need to go ahead and be able to offer some subtle detailing and development. And if I close off that with a hard line, I'll never get that back. Because remember, the underside of the tentacle, instead of being this dark black, the underside of the tentacle is actually going to be more fleshy. It's going to be much more light. Think of the arms that you're seeing down below, but even lighter than that. I'm going to try to be as gentle with that part of the piece as I possibly can. You'll notice I kind of went outside the line there and I had to thicken that up. It totally happens. It happens to all of us. Sometimes you just make a line you didn't intend to make. And that's okay. Again, there are no mistakes when you're working in creating art. There's only new opportunities you did not expect. If you can remember that, you'll be much happier with the outputs you're able to create. I'm going to go ahead and put a very hard line against the beard here. I need to go ahead and separate the beard. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that with a micron. I need the beard to be protected. I've already done all that stroke work, and to make a mistake now and go over that would just be stupid. And it would cause an unnecessary interruption to all of that, the flow of the hair, because the hair currently has a really beautiful flow to it, and I just don't need to compromise that. So I'm just going to go ahead and, I think I'm going to have to get a new micron. I think this one's almost dead. Having to go over stuff 2 or 3 times. Hey, welcome to the stream, guys. Happy to have you here. I have 3 viewers on between YouTube and Twitch. My name is Random Hamilton. Thank you for jumping in. I'm just we're just chilling at drawing. We're continuing to develop this piece that we've been working on now for a few days. We've got about 12 hours of drawing in it. If I'm being honest, it's about 6 hours of actual drawing because the rest of the time I'm sitting here chatting, which I am enjoying the hell out of. So, if you are interested, I would love to have everybody's welcome to jump in and hop into our chats, share your ideas, share your thoughts. Super excited to have any suggestions or feelings or preferences. The way my channel is being built is we're building to build our community. And that's kind of just the way I'm really looking forward to developing this is let's build something together. So what you're watching me do is I'm doing a technique called pen painting. I'm using a Bic pen, and the Bic is drug along the top surface of the paper without forcing grooves into the paper. What this allows us to do is this allows us to keep the pen actually, or the ink actually wet, and then just build up layers of depth over the course of just moving the ballpoint back and forth. At this point I'm working on the tentacle. We started in by laying in some Sharpie so I could really force myself into some uncomfortable places, which is my favorite place to work. Put some ink down and then build it up around it. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just keep pushing. I just laid in a hard line for the tentacle as it goes along the side of the underside. Now what you'll notice is I'm not trying to maintain the highlight here, and that's because the underside of the tentacle is going to be our lightest point. It's actually on the page. The tentacle underside may look like the lightest point on the entire piece because it's going to have the largest area of uninterrupted white space. That's not to say that I won't have pen work on top of it, but I'm not going to go ahead and force or attempt to
make it look like there's big transitions between black and red, or black and white on the underside of the tentacle, like I'm doing on the top here. The top here is very clearly going to be a dark point because I'm making the tentacle black. But what I can do is I can go ahead and start creating opportunities for that white to pop, but also make it look like there's still some undulation and form to this tentacle. And so we're just pulling the ink very softly. I'm not pressing down. Just like that. One of the things I really enjoy seeing is people's techniques. I've only run across a few individuals in my life as an artist that approach working in pens like I do. And that's not to say that I'm super special or anything like that, far from it. I'm just utilizing built-in techniques from the way that we create, naturally. I've just taken it and indexed a path that is a little more unique to what I'm comfortable with. The reason that's important is because it is genuinely about trying to interpret intent. What I mean by that is that, apologies, let me turn my ringer down real quick. That should not be going off like that. Okay, there we go. Alright, back to what I was saying. Interpreting your ideas so that they can reflect the world around you. Now, I will never be the one to say that you need to try to hit realism, right? Realism is a pain in the ass to hit. I certainly don't hit realism. I hit like realism, right? Like the work I'm doing here, it simulates the fact that there's highlights and lowlights. It simulates that there's pops of dark and light and whatnot. It indicates that there are lifts and rises and highlights. But you can't look at this and say, oh, this is realism. It's just too far. It's too far a bridge. We're in an abstract space, right? So it's okay to be in an abstract space. It's okay to live in that. Just, you have to accept that that's the spot you're in, and then don't try to make it something it's not. I'm going to go ahead and just work without the paper there, because I think I'm blocking the artwork, and that's not very helpful for an artwork stream. You know. But we're going to go ahead and just pull the ink out. We want the pencil to stay super bright and poppy. The pencil is also going to be an extremely bright part of the piece, because again, it's about drawing eyes towards the areas of the highest contrast. Pro tip: if you want somebody to take in the story of what you're drawing, all you have to do is make sure to create hot points of contrast. The eye is drawn to contrast. The eye looks for lights and darks right next to each other. That's why black and white are so effective, because black and white are the hottest and the darkest points where you can mix them together. And that's why grays can be effective, but very quickly grays flatten out pieces of artwork. Which is why I pretty much strictly work in black and white. And then if I'm going to do like a digital painting, or if I'm going to do a character development, then I'll bring grays in. Now, keep in mind, it depends on the type of work you're doing. If I'm doing concept artwork, let's say I'm doing character designs for concept art, then my first step is to break out some Sharpies and then just work super small. Often when I'm doing development of concept art, I grab my chunky Sharpie, this guy right here, one of my favorite pens in the entire world, and I just start exploring silhouettes. Keep it small, keep it easy, keep it loose. But then I try to find ways to break the silhouette. What about this makes me say, wait, that's not how the human body works. Why is that guy like that, right? To me, that's the most successful mark, when you're able to do something that makes you kind of look at it and say, well, how the hell does that work? Because therein lies your opportunity to explore. Therein lies your opportunity to take something and really push it. Now, again, this isn't something that I'm going to run with, but what I'll usually do is I'll do 2 or 3 pages of just silhouettes in a Sharpie. And then I'll take the ones that I feel the most promising,
I'll blow them up slightly, and then I'll start going over them with a bit. Another alternative to this method, and this is a way that I also learned in my early days of designing, is I will go through with a gray pen. Do the same thing, same exercise. Let's go ahead and just, now this might be a little too light for you to see on the stream. Let's go with a brown. But I'll go ahead and start defining just structure, shape. I know that what the body looks like. I can go ahead and lay down the skeleton here. I tend to like have my characters standing out. And then now I'm like, okay, well there's my structure. Let's go with a really tiny waist. Let's go ahead and build out these hips. But what if instead of, normal foot coming down, we have something like this, right? To me, it's never about things being in a very specific form. It's about opening yourself up to the unexpected. So then maybe I can go ahead and do something like this. And then let's go ahead and give them maybe a half cloak. Make it asymmetrical. Now we're getting somewhere. And let's go ahead and say maybe there's like a big ass sword. Or maybe that's a rifle tip. Who knows? What we've done is we've created an interesting silhouette that doesn't have to be constrained. I can then take this and I can come in with a pen and I can really start playing. Where's the head at in this morass? Okay, well the head's right there. And then this is a helmet. This is a breastplate. Okay, so now we've defined this upper torso. Okay, well how does this work? So he's got maybe like a skeleton kind of structure here. Maybe this is all mechanical. And that's really tight loose. We have kind of like big lifts right here on the legs. Alright, so now we're starting to get an indication of mechanics. So we know this is mechanical, or it could be biomechanical. We know that there is some kind of thing sticking up here, and I like the idea of this actually being something maybe more akin to like a rifle or something. And then the rifle kind of sticks out like this. Maybe this is the stock. So the rifle is resting over the back of the shoulder. So maybe this is more like a cloak that hangs down. And his arm would be inside there. We could go ahead and put some kind of bit over the back, and then we could do some bit. Anyways, I'm getting distracted, but you get the idea, right? It's about taking and developing ideas, base layer, and work your way up. Give yourself as much room to play that you're comfortable with, and the creation will just naturally happen. It's just kind of how art works. Invest in the time, having a hand, do your wrist exercises, super important. I cannot stress this enough. There are 3 things that are important to you being a successful artist. Number 1, posture. Sit up straight. Do your back exercises. And all I mean by that is at the end of the day, if you've been drawing for 5 hours, get on the floor, do some yoga poses, do some downward dog, do some child's pose. Give your body a chance to spread all that compression out and relax. That's good for your arms. That's good for your back. It's good for your hands. Do your wrist exercises. Rotate your wrists. This is so important. If you want to be able to do good work, go through and stretch out your hands, stretch out your arms. This is all connected stuff, and just give your body the refreshment it needs. Also, your shoulders. Shoulders are super important. They're the gateway to the hand, right? If your shoulder's weak, your arm's going to get tired. You're going to get lazy with your stroke. And what I mean by that is, let's go back to the piece we're working on today. There's no shortcut to making this go faster. You just got to do it. You got to put the time in. You got to work with the pen and just slowly develop and push. And so it's really important, no matter what kind of style of art you do. Like, I think a lot of people will pop into the stream, they'll see this and they're like, it's really not my style of art, and they'll bail out. And that's totally fine. I'm not here to convince anybody that I'm the right guy that they should even care to listen to. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I love to draw. I want to meet other people that like to draw. I want to build a community. And I want to make a career out of being here with you on social media and just making art that's fun. I'm tired of making art for clients that and businesses that just see me as one more cog to push through for the next commercial release, which has been the last 15 years of my time. I actually quit art for a long time. going into 3D and doing retail design. I stopped drawing for 2 years. In fact, I only just started drawing again about a month ago. About a month ago, yeah. Let me correct something there. Let me clarify something though. What I mean by that is, I've been doodling forever, but I've only started drawing, like really sticking down and doing the work to the degree that it takes to do the work for about a month now. I took a kind of a pep talk from my wife, where she said, "You need to do this because you're driving me crazy because you have too many ideas and you're not doing anything with them," which is totally true. Unfortunately, I have a bit of an addictive personality. When I do something, I kind of go all in. The same can be said for art, but it's also said for when I have an idea that I can't resolve. It just sits there, and my mind is never that far away from going, but what about this? What if you did this? And so it really does, it is behooving of me to get those ideas out in some way. And for me, that is through art. It's through creation. It's through development of visuals. It's through storytelling. There's going to be some times where using reference is really important as well. Like if I was trying to nail realism on this, I would go grab pictures of a tentacle and put that down in front of myself and work from the tentacle. But I don't care to. In this case, this is just a piece that I love to do. This is just a labor of love. And hopefully it's something that you enjoy as I explore that. And hopefully, as I get more participants, you guys can start throwing ideas my way on what you'd like to see drawn. Because I think that that's, at the end of the day, my real happy place. And that's something I've got my Discord, I got my Discord saved and everything, but I need to start creating community engagement, posting the artwork there, inviting people to my Discord. I only started streaming just this week, so I'm still pretty new at this whole thing, so I'm not going to be too hard on myself. But I'm currently entirely in improvement and development mode. Part of that's also this format we have here, where I'm talking and drawing. I don't necessarily think the style of drawing is the most fun to watch because it's such a slow build that it takes a while to get to where we're going to go. I think people are going to be much happier just seeing the results on Instagram once a week and being like, "Oh, cool, he made that," and then maybe pop in for 10 minutes to say hi and then bail out. I expect that to be normal. But eventually, if it's something that's a little more community-based, maybe we can do drawing challenges as a group. Maybe we can go ahead and put a topic up and then we can all draw together. I can just do it digitally so you can watch me go through the process on Photoshop or on Clip Studio. I have both, and I use both. Or maybe we break up the iPad and we do the artwork on Procreate, which is also a tool that I lean heavily into. You'll see me turn the page a lot. That's not because I'm trying to get part of this because I'm trying to get a better angle for the inking. The other part of it is I like to go ahead and just do a little tour around the piece as I add an area and just make sure that from all angles it is showing up how I want to. There's a really cool opportunity here for a nice highlight. So I'm going to go ahead and just embrace that. I'm going to start feathering this black right here. Feather, 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 very soft. Again, I'm knurling with the pen. That's the terminology we're going to use here. And guys, as soon as I get all of my my bumpers and all of my... Oh. Hey guys, 1 sec. I just need to go and mute so I can call off my wife and put our food over in. I'll be right back. All right, y'all, I'm back. Sorry about that. Just got the call from the wife that they're leaving the grocery store and they're going to pick up lunch. So we're going to keep drawing until they literally walk in the door. And then I'm going to go and hop off for lunch. But we'll know when they get here, right? So back to what I was saying. I am excited and interested to see what this becomes. I've thrown all my eggs in the basket, guys. I'm becoming a streamer. I've stopped pursuing advancing my career as a designer. It's just not for me anymore. I don't know. I like being home with my son. I like being stay-at-home dad is so cool. It's so cool. You get to watch this little thing develop in front of you, and it is a constant source of inspiration. It's absurd, and it makes you feel I've never felt better in my life. I'm like 40, and I'm not physically in the place where I want to be, but even then, I just feel good about myself as a person constantly. It's a really nice feeling. Anyways, what that means is that I am ready to take one more step as an artist that I've not taken before. And what that is I am ready to take on the role as an artist as a public facing and public participating member. One of the things that I think a lot of artists do is a lot of artists, and rightfully so because we do art at home, a lot of artists are just so used to developing as artists in their own personal spaces in the safety of their bubble. And one of the things that I have always loved, and I learned this back when I was in college, I love when you see artists put themselves out there and allow their mistakes to be a part of their process. And that's something that I'm constantly trying to model, and I am genuinely certain that will be something that will benefit me in the long run in this pursuit of being a streamer, is that allowing myself the grace to just put my mistakes in front of people hopefully will be a thing that encourages others to do the same, not necessarily through streaming, of course, but around family members, around friends, around peers, classmates. I want you to create art when you're in the best space possible, because to me, and in my experience, and all the artists and all the people I've ever worked with, your best work comes when you're in a good state mentally, when you're in a good state with how you feel for the day, or maybe not, maybe you need a very specific emotional state, but at the very least, being given the opportunity to define and then control that state is to me just such a pivotal aspect of being the artist you want to be. And what I hope is that over the course of creating this community that we're going to be building, that I am now on the path for, I'm here. There's no going back. I've made the commitments. I've told the family members. I've told the friends. I've committed. For those who are joining the stream right now, welcome. Thank you for jumping in. We're just drawing and working on. Let me turn my ringer off. Apologies about that. We're just drawing and working on developing this piece of art. Bit of a slow go today, of course. I did a little work on my Instagram today. Did a little work on my After Effects for my bumpers, for my YouTube and Twitch. And right now we're developing this dark tentacle through a method called pen painting, where we are not pushing the nib down into the paper. We're simply putting ink on the page and dragging it along. I've laid these large areas of black you're seeing are Sharpie that I've laid in. There's a reason for that. Go ahead and check this call that just happened real quick. Guys, for 1 second, I've just got to respond to this call. Alright, scrap that. That makes for a bad stream. We don't need to talk to me on the phone right now. We'll be streaming until my wife and son literally walk in the door with lunch. So we'll just keep pushing until we get there. It's probably about 30 minutes, I would say. We'll be drawing until I have to take a break. So we're pushing with ink painting. What that means is that we are not pushing the pen ballpoint into the paper, which means we're not scoring the paper.
which means that when we're laying this pen down and we're just putting this on, this pen is, the ink itself is still wet. And so by doing this, it allows us to push the ink around subtly and just develop the lighting naturally. Now, there will be times, as you can see, there's areas where there's big black, there's areas where I'll absolutely lay down hard lines. But right now, we're doing the actual underside of the tentacle, which is going to have the least amount of highlights. But the reason I'm still working on keeping these moments of hot pops is because I want the tentacle and the face to be where the eye goes when you come to this piece. Because at the end of the day, as artists, we're storytellers. And that's all we're doing. We're telling stories. We're trying to push this idea out and reflect that. And in this case, I'm trying to communicate that this is, in fact, a glossy, black, almost wet tentacle. To some degree wet. Maybe not wet. I don't know. We'll see. It's just a black tentacle with some glossy pops. And I'm just going to keep pushing down here. That transitioned really nicely. Let's go ahead and develop this underside here. You know, as big and daunting as the tentacle looked, we've actually gotten through the black fairly quickly. You know, again, part of the reason I used a Sharpie is not only to block out that part of the piece so I have to live with what I'm dealing with, but it's also because it just cuts the time of developing this out. And imagine if I had to paint the entire bloody tentacle in this painting method with the pen. It would not go quick. So we're just gonna appreciate the fact that this is an opportunity to cut corners in a way that does not compromise the quality or the storytelling method on the page. For those who are in the stream, welcome. Any ideas or participation? Anything you want to say in the chat? I love to hear any of your ideas. We are building something now with some real longevity to it, and that is going to come on the backs of your guys' ideas, what you guys want to see, how you guys want to participate in this process. And so I am just looking to develop that and develop along with it, and since this is only my first week ever streaming, we're just going to kind of see what happens. We're going to, just going to let it come to life. I'm not trying to force anything. We'll naturally and passively build a community. That will happen. Part of that is I haven't finished all of the things on my social media platforms so that I have a consistent look to my brand. I haven't even put out different drawing challenges or what we want to do. So we're at the very beginning of this, but the fact that you're here and the fact that I'm here means that we're already on the path to doing something, right? And the fact that you're sharing your time with me and being a viewer of mine, I can't thank you enough. That's why I'm here, and hopefully over the course of working on this, you feel emboldened to come and participate, chat, throw ideas in there, give me feedback. I'm very open. I am not going to do this right the first time. I promise you. I'm going to make mistakes. It's going to be probably a few months before I can reasonably expect to start building enough towards some kind of monetization. I will gladly be wrong about that, but I'm not setting my expectations beyond what I think are reasonable. I have a wife and a child that I'm accountable to, and I can't build them up on hope. We gotta be realistic. We haven't had an income coming in, and we have to do this. But I don't know. I've gotten enough positive feedback from a lot of other content creators on YouTube and Twitch who've reached out to me and said they're really excited to see what we're doing here. And they've offered to, help me in any way they can to offer guidance, help me set up my stream, help me develop my different assets. I've had some really generous offers. I've got a gentleman who reached out to me who's writing music for me. He's writing the whole intro bumper and exit bumper for my audio, which is super exciting. I see that I come on and I live stream 3 times a week. I put out videos 3 times a week. And then in the evenings, I hang out and I play video games with you guys. And that combination of art creation, developing assets, and building something that the community drives is such a dream to me. And would be just, I think could be something that I could really find some true growth in. Long-term goals, I would love to take the artwork that's derived from this channel, from this stream, and get an art book out every 90 days or so, maybe a little longer, maybe or 6 months, but actually take the artwork that comes from this, get it into an art book, get it completely free for you to download, and then eventually when we get enough artwork and we're really happy with where things are at, I think it would be really amazing to go ahead and start transitioning all of the artwork we're creating into a vinyl toy line that we can have seasonally released. Again, finding ways to make sure that if you're a subscriber or a participant, you have a greatly diminished cost, if not opportunities to get the items for free. I don't genuinely know what that looks like yet. Again, this is my first week, but I have to believe that there's a place and there's a way for us to accomplish that, and that seems really exciting to me. So we'll just see as that happens. I'm going to break the paper out now again. My hand sweats, and I don't need to add any more blending up here. And your hand is this amazing blender when it's wet. It's just how the body works. So because I'm so incapable of lifting my hand off the paper because I'm just terrible at it, I'm going to go and put a piece of paper there and allow that to be my safety mechanism. So it's going to block out some of the picture, but I assure you it's all very important for the success of this part right here. So I apologize if I'm blocking the picture, but we're just going to go, it's only temporary, and we'll be right through it in just a moment. And I'm just dragging our ink, dragging, pulling down. And again, pulling the ink. Now, earlier we made a really strong outline around this beard to keep it safe, and we're going to just reinforce that. I have to make sure the beard is not affected by the dark, and one of the things that helps with that is using a much darker ink, right? So Bic is jumping in to say hi. Awesome! Hey man, welcome to the stream, Brian. Brian. Long time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a man who taught me how to be the person I am right now. He taught me how to talk to people. He taught me how to stand in front of people and be confident. He taught me how to not be a total jackass and a teenager. So welcome, Brian. Welcome on. I'm super happy to have you here. So just kind of been talking to everybody through the techniques and what we're doing. To give you some context, because you know me, I have decided to go ahead and go full steam into a new career in streaming. I've left being a designer behind. I just can't do it anymore. You're working on projects where you're hitting a deadline, it gets passed off, and you never see it again, and you just kind of need to craft something new. And I learned something that I really love, being a stay-at-home dad. And so in order to enable that and to be with my son, and I'll never get these early years back of his life ever again. So when they're gone, they're gone. We're only having one kid, and I don't want to miss it. I missed the first year because I was in studios, and then COVID hit and I was forced home, and I realized that this is what I want to do for the next couple of years. Until he doesn't need me anymore, I'd like to be here. And so that's what I'm doing. And so streaming is going to enable that. Streaming and making YouTube content. One of the things I really plan on doing is building a community around art technique, developing the tools and skills for as many people as we can, and then just making an environment where people can kind of come and hang out, chill, and be present. I really believe that the best results I've ever gotten out of being an artist, the best results I've ever gotten out of being creative, has been when I've been surrounded by people that are better artists than me, when I've been surrounded by people that are just good people, and they enrich my life, and we enrich each other through the efforts we put forward in the artwork we make. And I think it's something we can build here. It'll take some time. It'll be a slow build. And you know what? It's going to be just one of those grinds, But it feels good, and I've actually got some amazing support from my wife, who was like, yes, do it. This is it. Pursue this, make this happen, make this a reality. Still take work so you can make money. But she was like, I would rather be able to tell people that my husband streams and puts content on YouTube and makes artwork on YouTube and Twitch and loves what he does than have to tell them what I've had to tell them for the last 10, 12 years.
it. He just kind of does it. He enjoys it. It's not bad. He finds some stuff in it. Brian may not admit this, but I'm a terrible employee. I'll be the first. I'm a little bit headstrong. I come in a little hot. For those who don't know what that means, it means I just come in with a little bit too much energy into environments. And in the corporate world, often it is interpreted as me just not being a very yes man. And I will be the first one to admit that. I am not a yes man. I rile and rail against that idea. It is not fulfilling. It makes me feel like I am not being myself, which is fairly true, but also plenty of people are perfectly themselves and able to manage that. That's more of just a weakness of character on my part. Passionate's a better term. My favorite one I always get, instead of passionate, they'd be like, we feel like you're really enthusiastic. Like, I really appreciate your enthusiasm. Okay, we know what they're trying to say. And I appreciate that they're trying to be nice and communicate that in a way that's not offensive. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, I think that some people are just not good employees for a multitude of reasons. And I think that I'm probably in that category. However, my wife has run this extremely successful hair business. She's currently keeping us afloat because I'm unemployed. She is running this extremely successful hair business for years and years and years, as long as I've known her. And from a business standpoint, I trust her. I trust her immensely. I trust what she's capable of. I trust what her insights are. And she was one of the first ones to look at what I'm doing here, my idea, and when I took the first stream, and said, you know what? I think you can make something here. I think you can do this. You like hearing your own voice, which is true. You like talking. You like sharing and processing ideas. And I can't disagree. And what I'm really hoping to do is, as we start pushing this forward, I want to start bringing more and more people to this community that aren't artists, but also are artists. I want to bring ideas. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about art, we're talking about storytelling. That's all we are. We are visual storytellers. We are creating and communicating these bigger ideas just through the pens or the pencils or the digital canvas, whatever method you take, whatever way that you do you. And again, there is no right way. It is all gravy. Everything, any way you choose to communicate your story, your ideas, is the right way. It's just about landing the technique so that it's coming off in the way physically you want it to manifest, right? That's where technique comes in. Technique comes in because you are trying to replicate your method in the best way you can think of, and you're trying to create the very best way to get somebody to engage in a way that you are with the idea that's in your head, right? You think of great paintings. Well, nobody knew what the hell the Mona Lisa was about until the Mona Lisa was painted. It's not like it's not like the famous artists of the past went to somebody who's like, okay, here's my idea. This is what I'm going to paint. What do you think? Like they just painted. Maybe it was a commission or a request, but they just kind of picked their direction and went. And that's really, to me, the thing I would love to encourage and explore on our channel is, how do we make that the baseline expectation when you're going to come in and be a part of an art stream? Because I would like it to be I will always be creating art. I'll always be participating. But I would much rather be working on something that the community is attached to or feels a connection to than something that's just in my head and I can share that stuff on social media all day long. I'll share my work and my ideas. That's fine. But okay, so this is a problem. See this little knockout here? At this point, it doesn't make sense. So I have a couple options here. I can cheat, and I can black it out with a Sharpie, and then we'll deal with the consequences of that. Or I can use a pink pen, and I can wash it out with white, and that way it just kind of disappears. I did that down here. You can't see it now, but right here, I had to use a paint pen to get rid of a line that I might still have to go back over later on. Let's just paint pen it. Fuck it, let's paint pen it.
Great way to just work out an area that's problematic. With it now, keep in mind we're working with Bic, and we're working with pen that we did not push down into the actual paper, which means there's no grooves, which also means all that pen is very apt to get smeared if I go over with a paint pen. So the trick is to just dab. Go in there, slowly but surely, build up through dabbing. And that will be the cleanest way for us to get rid of that old line. By the way, this is a very normal thing to see in a lot of ink work. There's tons of whiting out on ink work. Every artist, no matter how skilled they are, we all make mistakes. It's just part of the process. Okay, we're going to leave that there. I feel like this area is resolved enough. I can walk away from that. Let's get the inside of the tentacle, because that was the whole point here. We made the darkest point on the page. We now see the tentacle as the darkest point. Everything, tell me, there's something you'll notice here about my art, my piece here. We're creating line with visualization. So let's take this pencil. The pencil points right at the eyeball. The face is going to be the highest point of contrast next to the tentacle. From the face, you go down here, you go here, and you go here. Everything here, from the arm to this hand to this arm, I am pointing you down this direction. And the reason for that is because I'm trying to tell the viewer the way I want them to consume the artwork. That's not to say that you've got to enjoy it or watch it or read it how you do, but I'm providing a pathway, I'm providing a visual map to draw you around the page. The greatest artwork in the world, the masters, go and look at them, and then go into Google and type in triangle. Like go to type in Mona Lisa triangle, and you're going to see somebody's visualized that shape, because our eye wants to follow contrast. As creatures, we want to follow the path that's laid down. So by creating directional pointers like a pencil pointing at the face, which I want you to start technically here. So I'm telling you where I want you to look with this pencil, right? And then from there you have line, line, follow the hands, line. Everything's anchoring you to go back up the page from those arms. It's a subtle thing. It's not going to make a bad piece of art good or a good piece of art bad. It's not going to be the thing that is the thing I'm going for. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to allow myself as many opportunities to convey this idea in this story as I can. Now, we're going to go back to the tentacles. We're now on the underside. Now, keep in mind, the black portion is glossy and hot. It's aggressively dark. The inside, the soft side of, all the tentacles soft, but in my world, the soft part of the skin on the underside, that's going to be a lot softer. And so I'm working with pen, so we got to be cautious. And we're pen painting today, so for those who are unfamiliar with the technique, I'm using a Bic pen, and instead of pressing the pen down into the paper, we're just dragging the ballpoint along the surface so that we're not scoring the pen into the paper. We don't want to damage the paper. Let's not say that's not actually use a pen, but in this method. And by doing that, we can do really beautiful, soft buildups by just taking our time and dragging the ink, and we're just pulling it along. All I'm doing is I'm loading pen onto the actual page, and then I'm dragging it along and pulling it through. All of these suckers are effectively, think of the way I picture them is almost like a donut that's cut in half. So a sucker on this tentacle, take a regular donut, slice it completely in half. And so what you have is that upper half of the donut that kind of dips in like this and then goes along with the skin. So that's the way I'm kind of creating these to have that kind of effect. Now there's very obviously going to be shading in here. There's very obviously going to be a few wrinkles, a few little lines that look a little deeper, but at no point are we going to bring a hard black line into this space. I want this to feel soft. I want you to see it and go, oh, that's such a different texture than the outside of the tentacle. For those who are just joining me, I'm only going to be on for a few more moments because as soon as my wife and my son get here with lunch, I need to hop off and eat some lunch. We're going to have some Philly cheesesteaks today. But until then, we're just going to push. We're going to keep going, crushing along. My name is Random Hamilton. For those who are new to the channel, I am a stay-at-home dad, streamer, and artist. I just started streaming this week, but we are here to build a community and build an environment for artists, for creatives, and for ideas. If you're here, I just want you to be here and enjoying yourself. We can chat, we can talk. There will be times where I just want to play video games. In the evenings, usually, we'll be doing some gaming. I play things like Final Fantasy XIV. Did play WoW. I haven't played WoW as much these days. And just, I just want to, create a space where y'all can just hang out and have a nice time. And I think, to me, that's my happy place. Eventually, I would like to stop being the one coming up with the ideas for this artwork, and I would love to have the community and my participants offer their ideas, their suggestions, and what they would like to see. That might be fan art one day. You know, we could do some My Hero Academia. We could do anything. You know, anything. We can. I appreciate that, Brian. That's yeah, right. A good Philly cheesesteak. That's exactly. In fact, it's the place we went to after we played golf. Speaking of, we need to go play golf again. It's been too long, and now I have fully committed to no longer being in the agency. My time has opened up quite a bit. So let's make that happen. By the way. Oh. Speaking of, hey, Bubba! Hey, Bubba! Hi! Guys, my son and my wife have just gotten home. I need to go ahead and end the stream for the time being, have some lunch, and just fill up on my day. Hey, big boy! My son is talking through the window. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back this afternoon between the hours of 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. So if you'd like to jump back in, please hit me back. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. And I look forward to seeing you next time. All right, guys. Have a good day. Talk to you later. Absolutely, Brian. I'll send